everybody. Hope you're doing well. I'm super excited to be here and for all of you guys participating today and for those that will watch the video afterwards. I'm super stoked, and for all of you guys going through this tough time, all of us are in this together, united as one. And I hope that today can teach you something that you can, take with you throughout this time that we live in. Anyway, so I'm going to talk to you about how to uptrend your business to be future fit. And the reason I'm going to do that is to upgrade your consciousness, to switch gears, to avoid organizational death and decline. It's going to be a very, very tough time ahead for businesses and organizations. And I just want to share some of the learnings that I've had over this time. So I'm going to share my slides. Okay, so just give me 1 second. Okay, so currently what's happening is, including myself, we are all suffering from what they call future shock. Now, Alvin Toffler used the term future shock to say there's too much change happening in too short a period of time. And the one thing that we all need to embrace right now as we are sitting here is this is the slowest that life is going to be. So if you think today is fast, it is going to be the slowest day ever. I want to point out that we have, as a society, have become the walking dead professionals of our time. And the reason for that is we are so busy being busy. Attention is a finite resource, and we have not been paying attention to things that we should have paid attention to because we've been so busy. And although we have been hit by something terrible, we've always known that we are facing unprecedented change and a very fickle customer that continuously changes their behavior very quick and very fast. And because we're so busy in daily meetings and trying to get stuff done, and not focusing on the vision of the business, it does tend to put us in a position of weakness rather than strength. So I like to use the analogy of the baobab tree. I used to work in the bush for 4 years, and I've always been super in love with nature and being around it. And the baobab tree is the monolithic power of the bush. It's got its roots in the soil, deeply structured. It can live up to 3,000 years. The wonderful thing about the baobab tree is that its fruit takes about 9 months to bear. And the other thing that's interesting about the baobab tree is that all the insects and all the animals live in this tree, and it becomes a home. It sustains its own ecosystem, so therefore it's got a lot of water in its bark, so it can protect itself against droughts and stuff like that. So it's fire resistant, and it's a beautiful, beautiful tree, and it's like the biggest tree in Africa. The only thing that a lot of people don't know is that this tree is becoming extinct, and it's dying one by one in Africa, which is very sad. But doesn't that sound familiar? The reason why these trees are dying, environment around it that is changing, that is making this tree die. And this is exactly what is happening in society, and what's happening now with COVID-19 is that we have all of this change happening around us. And now what we need to do is we need to be agile, and we can't be agile because our roots are so deeply structured into the soil, and it's going to lead to death and decline of organizations. So I want to talk to you about untrending. So untrend is actually a very cool word. It means non-conforming, very bespoke. So I love trends, but I'm also very skeptical of trends. I think it's very important to know what trends are happening to give you perspective, but without context, they don't really mean something. And people tend to follow a lot of trends, but it's important to understand it so that you can see where the trajectory is going. But at the same time, what you also need to understand is that when you become trend obsessed, it can lead you down the wrong the wrong pathway, if I may put it that way. So what I want to talk to you about is I've been dealing with hundreds of marketers for probably um, 10, 10, 12 years. And I have to tell you, there's one common denominator that happens in all marketing departments and in businesses and organizations is they use tactics rather than strategy. They can't keep up with the pace. As we are sitting here today, it's completely changed. Now we can't use tactics. There is still a few brands trying to do that, and it's frustrating. Like the funeral cover ads that we're seeing exploiting the time that we're in and selling funeral cover and using this vulnerability to try and make sales. But those tactics are not going to work. If you want to really reach out to people, marketing to people is not the right thing to do right now. And we need to recognize that. So the pace is slowed down. If you're in digital, if you're in learning, if you're shopping, if you do grocery stores, etc. There's a lot of businesses that are working through the clock to support the nation and their countries, and obviously the people in the front line. But there's also a lot of us where the pace is slowed down and we can't do anything until such time that the lockdown stops. And now all the new is coming towards us and we're petrified. Jeff Bezos always says a company shouldn't get addicted to being because shiny doesn't last. And it's so true. Chasing the new is short-lived, but chasing value, that is long-lived. And it's something very important that we need to always bear in mind when we reach out to our consumers and when we're trying to serve people. If we don't bring value, we don't mean anything. So keeping to the theme of the tree, something that's very interesting is a lot of people, we always look at the symptoms of our businesses and we go, we don't understand what the causes are. Use that polyfiller effect. We just put polyfiller. Oh no, let's just fix this problem now quickly and then we move on to the next thing. But it's going to cost their business a lot of money to do that. And through my years of working with companies, I have found that this has been one of the biggest challenges. So in order for you to actually understand the problems in your organizations, you need to look at the roots, not at the branches, because the branches shows the last sign. When your roots are damaged, it will only show in the leaves and in the branches much later. So always go into the roots of your problems. What we do as a business at Booyah is we help businesses to become future fit. And we use this design thinking methodology, which I like to call the 8 Eyes. And it's an infinity model. So you can literally switch in between all these various models and in order to unpack how to become future fit. Now, I don't want to go into detail about that because that will keep us here for longer than 21 minutes. So what I would prefer to do is to share some of the insights and the dilemmas that businesses have been dealing with, which in this time has caused businesses not to be agile and not being able to react quickly enough to what's happening right now. So the first thing is being the voice of the customer. The moment that you join a company, whether you like to admit it or not, you no longer represent the customer. You represent stakeholders, you represent corporate politics, being the time. And the problem with that is once you have lost your voice in your organization, you can no longer be the voice of customer. And that is the most important thing that businesses need to acknowledge in today's life. I like to refer to this egg. Looks like a standard normal egg, but I love the story behind it. No, it's not about who came first, the egg or the chicken, but basically what it says is if you crack an egg from the outside, it means death. If you crack an egg from the inside, it means life. And this is the thing that we need to understand is that organizations for a very, very long time have been ignoring the fact that they have been partnering with external partners, external factors, putting out a message, we are the most amazing company, we do all these extraordinary things, but inside, it is an absolute toxic environment. We have such a bad culture. Now, the problem with a bad culture is that it speeds the company down. So, with other words, when people are not happy, when they are unhappy, it spreads like cancer. People start politics. When politics starts happening, it starts exuding out in the way that they treat their customers. And at the same time as when people are unhappy, they cannot bring life to your organization. And bureaucracy is probably one of the biggest challenges because it removes innovation and collaboration. And this is where businesses have failed desperately, is by not paying enough attention to their internal cultures. There's a thing called, I'm not going to try and say this, I'm not a doctor, but I was watching Netflix and his doctor was explaining this, and I thought, oh my goodness, this is so profound. Okay, I'm going to try. Subo Cardiomyopathy. Right, it's a symptom that they've found when people marry, are married for 40 years and the husband dies and then the wife dies. And people are under a tremendous amount of stress and anxiety and unhappiness, the shape of their hearts change. And you can see in this picture, and it's actually based on this pot, which is a Japanese pot, this is what's been happening in so many organizations, is that people have found them in a place where they are so unhappy and their hearts are changing shapes. And we need to recognize that the people of our organization is the hearts and the blood and that flows through the veins. So we need to treat our people with utmost respect in all times, which is many reasons why companies have been facing dilemmas, and especially in this new time that we're in. Faux transformations. I've been dealing with a lot of companies that invest in state-of-the-art technology, the best technology costing them millions. But then they build it on old-fashioned business models, which doesn't make any sense. So why would you invest in new technology when you haven't fixed your foundations and you haven't got that part of your business correct? So if you are going to do that, you become a legacy business and you are unable to adapt to change because you need new business models. And this is a very big dilemma that has also kept businesses from becoming future fit. And then I'm not going to sing, or should I try, like ABBA sings, like money, 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 must be funny. Well, this is the thing that we do in organizations. All we do is chase money. So because we're chasing money, we actually become reckless because money is a result. Money is not your purpose. And Simon Sinek talks about that all the time, is what is your why? And it's always important for you to understand what that why is. But also what is happening in organizations is a lot of wastage. Too much money substitutes thinking. So when you are spending a lot of money on advertising, so I'll give you an example. If you're spending 10 million rand a year on advertising and 40% of people drop off on your website within 10 seconds, then you're wasting 40% of your budget because you're actually not fixing the fundamental problem of the leads coming through. If you make it impossible for people to do business with you, i.e. if you give people this huge list and forms to keep creating barriers, these are things that waste money in advertising, for example. But money is not the key driver. And like we see now with the funeral covers, I'm appalled by it. And I'm sorry if there's anybody representing the funeral industry, but I'm appalled to see how people are exploiting something so vulnerable in order to make money. Punitive policies. Oh my goodness. Punitive policies is my favorite one. We are so risk averse rather than risk conscious. If something small happens, what we do is we create so many systems and procedures and make it impossible for our customers to do business with us. I actually read an example of a small business. It was a farm stable. And this guy was doing so well, very popular, and he was fully sold out all his fruits and vegetables every Saturday morning. And one day, a lady came to buy vegetables and stuff from him, and she slipped on her high heels. And he said to her, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry." And she turned around and she sued him. And he then went and he changed the policies that nobody was allowed into his farm stable without wearing rubber shoes. And he was just giving people so many rules and regulations. And his business declined and he didn't make any money. And this is the thing with punitive policies, is when you make it impossible for people to do business and for people to do their jobs internally, it becomes a huge barrier. And we need to get to a place where we try and create seamless experiences within our organizations. My favorite one is analysis paralysis. I'm obsessed with data. As David just said, I always say, in God we trust, the rest must bring data. And we suffer from data obesity. We have so much data, but we don't know what it means, what it says. We use these terminologies, we use assumptions because we don't analyze our data correctly. We don't ask and pose the right questions to the data. And what happens is garbage in, garbage out. So if you don't understand your data and you just overthinking things, you're making assumptions, and you'll have skewed results, which means it's going to cost your money, your business, a lot of additional money in order to get things done. This is also not the right way to be future fit. If you're future fit and you analyze your data, you sometimes can see trends happening. Right, COVID-19, maybe we couldn't have predicted it as soon, but once we started seeing the trend, there was definitely a shift that was happening for weeks with our consumers as this thing started going from country to country. And it's a tough time. It's not saying who's right, who's wrong, and that's definitely what I don't want to get across. But I do think that as we are so busy being busy, we don't pay attention to the right information within our data and paying attention to what's going on outside. And sometimes we are reactive rather than proactive. The execution chasm is another great example. Oracle actually did a report many years ago, not many years ago, I think it was 2 years ago, that's not many years ago. And one of the insights that they were giving to people was the fact that people in customer experiences and the CEOs, over 93% of them see that as the priority for the next 2 years. And 91% said that they wanted to be leaders in customer experiences. But only 37%, and it's now 2 years later, have executed on that. So we overthink things. We create all these amazing strategies, greatest ideas, but we don't execute them. And that is also what leads us to a place where we can't be agile. And the bigger the organization, if you are a baobab tree, a monolithic power, the more difficult it becomes for you to be agile, and should be something that you need to work on very hard in order for you to be flexible. We don't put a price on trust. Trust is the currency of the 21st century. And I don't think enough people pay attention, or enough organizations pay attention to that. Accenture did a study, I think it was the Agility Index, and there was over 7,000 companies that they researched. And they discovered from the Agility Index that 54% of companies that did not have trust and have broken the trust with their customers have had a 3% decline in revenue. So there's definitely a link there. As we have moved now into a space where we're working remotely from home, a lot of employers are not trusting their staff to work remotely, and breaking the trust and micromanaging people and not giving people autonomy in this time is actually a very, very bad thing for your organization, because when people don't feel trusted, they don't want to work for you. And the talented people are the people that say, hey, I'm not staying for this. So trust is truly the currency of the 21st century and can really interfere with a business being fit for the future. Are we woke? woke is a word that's been going around for a long time. We all don't actually know what it means. I might be running over a few minutes. I do apologize, but I'm going to try my best to finish as quickly as possible. Are we woke? No, not necessarily, because I'm going to give you an example. A few years ago, there was a company locally that were planting trees, and they were just telling everybody how amazing their brand is. But then they were planting trees, but their actual product was taking resources out of the planet. Number one, and number two, it was their packaging was the only packaging that chemical engineers could not break down. Therefore, it's not eco-friendly and sustainable for the environment. Another example was the Fearless Girl that happened in New York. The statue that they placed in front of the bull. It was an incredible campaign. They erected the statue literally on International Women's Day, and just women must be empowered. Women are so amazing, and we need to have equality and diversity, inclusion, and all of that. And that was the message that they were sharing. And then at the back end, there was a lawsuit happening. I think it was over $5 million because they weren't paying their staff equally and women weren't paid equally. And this is the thing, is like we say things out there, but we don't live and practice what we preach. We don't put our money where our mouth is. And if you want to be a woke brand and you want to stand for something, when you mess up like that, it's very hard for people to forgive you. And be very cautious to tread on this. Whatever you say, think very clearly what you're going to say out there. If you practice it, if you don't practice it, you are going to have challenges going forward. So now we understand the biggest challenges that have kept businesses becoming future fit. So these things I've been preaching to companies for over 3 years. And a lot of them have just ignored it, continued, done the same thing over and over again. And then COVID-19 arrives. And they're not agile. Their basics are not working. The basic fundamental things that's supposed to work in your organization is not working. Now, on top of that, you have to do this huge crisis management. So we find ourselves in a very, very difficult position. And this part for me was the hardest to put together, because I don't know all the answers, but I am going to share with you what I think would be a good way to approach the situation. 21 is a very significant number. It's a very significant number. So I think what Henley Business School is doing is amazing, because 21 stands for unity. 21 is also the number to break patterns. 21 also is represents purpose and happiness. And I think during these 21 days, I think it's very important that we take this time to reflect, break patterns, learn more, do more, and start digging deep into our souls, into where we want to go and what we want to be. Don't panic. The biggest lesson that I have learned from many people is the fact that when you start panicking, you have an emotion of fear. The moment your emotions are high, you can't think clearly. So you need to calm yourself down. I know that there's a lot of you out there, and I know that there's some of my friends that are online today that have huge challenges ahead of them. But I want to tell you, it's going to be okay. This 21 days, use it so that you can reflect and understand what is happening and can become creative. And I'm going to prove to you that it actually history is happening. Today they announced in Italy 10,000 people died, which is a black day for the world. And in the Renaissance era, just before it started, the Black Death started, and that was 1 in 3 people died. And a lot of people inherited money during that time. So the modern world started developing. A lot of people were learning more. They were staying at home. They were being more creative. But something very significant happened. This guy here on your left, Johannes Gutenberg, he started the printing press. So before that, they used to take books And they used to go and stand in a village and then read out the Bible or the information that they have, or people would handwrite. There was no book that was the same. Everything was bespoke and different. And he then created the printing press so that they can make duplicate books, and thousands of books. And that is why we have the press, and it's still being used, this technology today. But what people don't know is that this guy democratized information. He made it accessible to everybody, for everybody to be able to learn. They call it the Renaissance era because it was the rebirth of creativity, because people sat down, they started learning, they started reading. It was the rebirth of art, creativity, poetry, philosophy, and so forth. And it kind of makes me think, this time that we are now in, is this not the time that we should be reflecting, introspecting, learn, read, be more creative, start a new hobby? I don't know, but there seems to be parallels. So Sarah says, feel my feelings and speak my words. Your role going out now is not marketing your brand. No, it's not going to go down well. But what you can do is form unity, and you are in this together with your customers. Your customers might change, your business might change, your business model, everything might change, but you can morph. And this is the important thing: is just to be compassionate, be empathetic, stop trying to sell something to people. Now is not the time for that. Einstein had a conversation with one of his friends, and it's so profound. He says, the West, we've built this beautiful ship, and in it was all comforts, but actually the one thing it doesn't have is a compass, and that is why it doesn't know where it's going. Your compass is your customers. Your compass is the human beings and the needs of the people out there. And the only way that you are going to be able to connect and to get the ship to shore is by following the compass, which is going to be through the people that need you the most right now. So take the L factor in consideration. Listen, learn, and love thy consumer. Love humanity. Listen to humanity and learn from them. Pay attention to the present. Recently, with John Flismus and I have a podcast called The In with the Two Outsiders, and we interviewed the legendary futurist Faith Popcorn, and she said something very profound. She says, pay attention to the present, because you're going to see the pattern that is going to happen, that you need to you can see if you are not saving for your pension today, you are going to see the pattern of being poor. That's going to be a fact. So look and pay attention to what's happening now around you and see where you can fit in. And I want to actually talk to you about John challenged me to become a vegan for 7 days on the podcast. And I was on my second day, and I was like, so like, oh no, I can do this. And my friend visited me, and she's like, Carmen, you realize that you're drinking milk in your coffee. You're not supposed to do that. You know that milk is not supposed to be in your coffee, right? And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm on autopilot. So let me explain the theory of autopilot. So your brain works in system 1 and system 2. So system 1 is where you receive 11 million bits of information per second through your sensorial experiences. And this is where your brain makes fast decisions. So it's on autopilot, and it just makes these decisions. System 2 is where your brain needs to reflect, and it really needs to understand why. But the moment that you become conscious, you become more aware, and that's where you become more strategic in the way that you come up with ideas and being solution driven. So that is the one thing that I am going. Yes.
Sorry to interject. Just a quick time check. We've got quite a lot of very good questions posed for you in the chat. So
almost done.
Good show.
Okay,
thank you.
Almost done. Cool. So all I'm going to say is, don't get rooted. Become the ivy. Don't have shallow roots, so that you can be flexible and you can go with a curve. Try, if I can give you one piece of advice: digital. add digital or technology to your business, then you're going to be okay. So start thinking those lines, because that is what's going to be the new reality for tomorrow. And face your fears, be curious. If you're not familiar with digital, do online courses, do courses to help you to enable this. This is so simple. Read a lot of information. One thing that people don't know about me is I study case studies, and I learn about, I read about 60 books a year to expand your mind. And then collaboration. This morning, Sunday Times, look at what they've done. ShopRite, Pick and Pay, Spar, Woolworths, and they collaborated. And this is going to be our future. So think of the people that you can collaborate with. I almost want to close off by saying, move towards co-creation, because that's where you will get perspective. Obviously, we'll share these slides with you. I am going over. I wanted to share the story of the ants with you, but there's not enough time for us to go through that. But you can read through it, and I will put some extra information for you in the slides. I think let's go over to the questions. Thank you.